Every move they made, every song they sang, captured millions of hearts. But what few people ever see is the truth behind the spotlight. The men who wrote the greatest love songs were often the loneliest, most broken souls once the lights went out. Behind the applause, some were accused of forcing lovers into silence, even abortions, to protect carefully crafted images. Others walked away from dozens of children the world would never know. We're conditioned to admire the legend, the voice, the charisma, while forgetting that behind the artist's smile lived a heart filled with fractures. This story isn't told to judge or simply expose. It's told to understand, to feel, and in some way, to love the flawed human behind the myth. The legends on this list may shock you. They may disturb you. They may challenge everything you thought you knew. Step into their real world, a place where desire isn't just instinct, but a wound so deep it never truly healed. Watch closely, then listen, reflect, and share your perspective when the story ends. Leon Haywood was the man with the music, and with offers few could ever refuse. In the sultry R&B world of the 1970s, his name alone was enough to make people blush, even as they leaned closer to the speakers. His hit, "I Want to Do Something Freaky to You," became an after-dark anthem, a song that stirred raw, instinctive emotions the music industry of that era usually pretended didn't exist. On stage, Leon was unforgettable, sharp, brightly colored suits, eyes that sparkled with mischief, and a smile that suggested he already knew exactly what you were thinking. But off-stage, the whispers followed him everywhere. Insiders called him the man with the music and the offers he could never refuse. Leon had it all: talent, charisma, industry connections. Yet behind the glamour, there were rumors of another kind of list. A list of women invited into the studio, not to sing. One veteran drummer later recalled a 1980 recording session in Chicago. Leon allegedly ordered the studio lights dimmed by 70%, then locked the door, leaving only himself and a young female singer inside. She eventually left the music business. Years later, after a few drinks, she reportedly said, "I wasn't chosen for my voice. I was chosen for my silence." In Atlanta, after a small soul club performance, Leon was said to have taken 3 women back to a hotel room. A receptionist claimed that shortly after midnight, one woman ran out in panic, while the other 2 stayed behind when security arrived. The tour manager stepped in, rented an extra room, and quietly moved the distressed woman elsewhere. No police were called. No official complaint was filed. Just a discreet note in a personnel log, and the tour rolled on. Leon Haywood was never sued. He was never named in a formal scandal. But the stories never disappeared. They circulated quietly, especially among female artists who warned one another in hushed tones. A former production assistant once said, "I walked into a room while he was playing piano. There was a girl beside him, nearly naked, blindfolded with his tie. He looked up and said, 'Don't worry. Music is a release.'" In his later years, Leon retreated from the spotlight. He stopped giving interviews, skipped industry events, and lived quietly, far from the stages that once adored him. When he died in 2016, a close friend remarked, "Leon died the way he lived, few words, full of hidden meanings, and no apologies." The question was never whether Leon Haywood loved music. The real question is whether he loved people. And whether those erotic melodies were not just seduction, but confessions from a lonely soul who never learned how to say sorry. Clarence Carter was a man who sang without clothes on his soul. He never needed the spotlight to command a room. All he needed was a single line, "I be strokin'." That was it. The song was too raw for many radio stations and quickly got banned, but it lived on anyway. It echoed through nightclubs, slipped into bedrooms, and played softly inside parked cars after midnight. Clarence Carter didn't write music to romanticize love. He wrote about sex, bare, unapologetic, and unfiltered. To many fans, that made him authentic. To others, it made him dangerous. Because Clarence wasn't just performing a persona. By many accounts, he was living it, without shame and without limits. A female singer who worked with him in 1982 later recalled her first recording session. Clarence sat behind the studio console, one hand adjusting the sound levels, the other resting on her leg beneath the table. When she pulled away, he smiled and said, "I need to feel it to produce better." The studio manager looked away. No one intervened. No one defended her. That session would be her last. She walked away from the music industry for good. A bassist who toured with Clarence said that on every tour, at least 3 women were brought onto the bus. They weren't staff. They weren't artists. They were his. Some were barely old enough to be in a club. Others were older, but their eyes told a different story, empty, distant, resigned. One woman was reportedly kicked off the tour bus in the middle of the night in Texas after refusing to go to his room. In 1991, a young journalist publicly accused Clarence after going to interview him. She said he insisted on a private interview in his hotel room, then attempted to lock the door. She escaped, barely. When she tried to publish the story, her newspaper refused. The fear of a lawsuit was stronger than the truth. Clarence Carter once said, "I write from my heart, and my heart loves women." But many believe that same heart also beat recklessly when backed by fame and power. To them, he used celebrity as armor, protection from accountability, from boundaries, from consequence. Today, Clarence Carter is still alive. Still performing. Still singing, stroking. But for those who stood too close to him, the song doesn't sound funny anymore. It sounds like a warning. A reminder that some artists never had to hide, because the world learned to laugh instead of question. And that leaves us with one final thought. Are we applauding something that was never meant to be called art at all? Don Covey, the Whisperer. He was never the loudest name in the room, never the biggest star under the spotlight, but somehow he was always the most magnetic presence there. Don Covey wrote for legends like Aretha Franklin, Little Richard, and himself, shaping an R&B sound that was raw, streetwise, slick, and undeniably sensual. But the whispers that followed Don Covey weren't about his music. They were about how he chose female talent. An invitation. A closed hotel room door. A dream of singing that faded into silence. In 1974, while recruiting singers for a new record, Don held what he called a private audition in a New York hotel room. A young singer named Alpha, who would later leave music altogether and work as a cashier in Baltimore, remembered the moment clearly. "He told me to sing," she said. "Then he told me to prove my confidence by sitting on his lap." When she refused, Don allegedly called in his assistant and said flatly, "This girl doesn't have the vibe." A sound engineer later claimed that Don had a habit of recording sessions that had nothing to do with music. Inside Stax Records, a leaked tape once circulated quietly. On it, Don could be heard telling a young woman, "You want to be like Aretha? Then you have to make me miss you with all 5 senses." The tape vanished. No one knows where it went. But the rumors never did. Don Covey lived behind closed doors. He spoke little about his personal life. According to a close friend, he fathered 3 children with 3 different female artists, none of whom were ever publicly acknowledged. In 1988, one of those children attempted to confront him at the Soul Train Awards, only to be stopped by security. As he was dragged away, the young man shouted, "You can write songs, but you can't be a father." When Don Covey died in 2015, headlines celebrated him as the soul of R&B. A visionary. A legend. But in the shadows of that praise, women and children remained silent. Not because they had nothing to say, but because no one was willing to listen. Maybe Don Covey's music is his legacy. But so is the silence surrounding his name. Because sometimes, behind a whisper, there is a scream. Buried for a lifetime. Major Lance, the wanderer with the charming, dishonest smile. He was known for that soft grin, his sleek black glasses, and a smooth, tender soul sound that felt effortless and warm. With hits like, Major Lance became a brief but undeniable phenomenon. To the public, he was the picture of elegance and romance. But behind the smile lived a man wrapped in mystery, excess, and quiet chaos. A drummer who toured with him in the 1970s once recalled that Major never booked a single hotel room. He always requested 2, one to sleep in, and one reserved strictly for entertaining female guests. Over time, this became an unspoken rule among promoters and show organizers. Inside Motown, whispers followed him. One night in Detroit, Major was reportedly seen entering a nightclub with 3 young women. One of them was the girlfriend of a major artist at the time. What happened next erupted into a backstage brawl, an incident never reported by the media, but serious enough that Major's name was quietly removed from a major tour lineup for internal reasons. Another story came from an anonymous sound technician in Los Angeles. He claimed that during a show, he saw Major walk out of a technical room with a dancer who was sobbing uncontrollably. That dancer was replaced before the show began and never returned. Years later, a handwritten letter surfaced, believed to be written by the same woman. In it, she spoke of being forced into silence, of learning that survival in the industry often meant saying nothing at all. By the end of his life, Major Lance had faded into the shadows. After serving prison time related to illegal drugs, he lost nearly all contact with the music world that once celebrated him. When he died in 1994 from heart disease, there was no tribute concert. No industry memorial. No public farewell. Only a short line appeared in the newspaper. The man who once had the brightest smile in Chicago has passed away. Sometimes, a smile can hide a deeply scarred soul. Major Lance is remembered for his gentle music, but those who walked beside him never forgot the darkness that lived behind the sound. Billy Paul. A man of 2 worlds. Billy Paul sang like a confession whispered in the dark. Me and Mrs. Jones became the most iconic love song about adultery ever recorded, tender, aching, and unforgettable. His voice was so haunting, so intimate, it felt as if he wasn't just singing the story, he had lived it. To the public, Billy was the definition of a romantic, a man whose music wrapped morality in silk and soul. But according to a former manager, that morality only existed from the waist up. In 1976, backstage at a Philadelphia show, Billy was caught in a disturbing situation with a young singer who had just signed her first contract. A security guard later said he opened the door after hearing raised voices. Inside, he saw the girl trying to pull her hand away from him. What followed was silence, bought and paid for. The incident disappeared behind money and closed mouths. Years later, the young woman quietly walked away from her career. In a rare interview, she said only this: his music was beautiful. He was not. Billy was rumored to have relationships with at least 3 women in the industry. One of them was married to a jazz musician who threatened to expose Billy using recorded tapes of their encounters. Once again, record labels stepped in, this time with checks, ensuring the truth never reached the public. When asked about love, Billy never denied anything. He simply said, "I love the way I do. And love has no rules." In his later years, Billy returned to the church and began recording gospel music. But those close to him noticed something was missing. His voice, once rich and commanding, had changed. One singer would later say, he didn't lose his tone. He lost his soul. When Billy Paul died in 2016, thousands mourned him by sharing his songs. But somewhere in the shadows, some women remained silent, carrying memories no one ever wanted to hear. To some, Billy Paul was a legend. To others, he was a scar that never healed. Marvin Cease, known to many as the Bed Preacher, was the living embodiment of unfiltered provocation. From songs like Candy Liquor to live performances that felt less like concerts and more like intimate rituals, Marvin didn't just entertain, he seduced. His shows left audiences blushing, mesmerized, and craving more. Behind the scenes, however, the industry whispered a different name. Marvin was infamous for his ability to manipulate women with nothing but his words, his image, and his reputation. A female singer who toured with him in 1993 recalled that in every city, Marvin requested 2 adjoining hotel rooms, one for himself and one for whoever would be with him that night. She watched as young women from the audience were invited on stage, only to vanish backstage moments later. Once, she asked quietly, "Are they fans?" The response came back cold and final, "It's an offering." In Atlanta, the illusion cracked. Police knocked on Marvin's hotel door after a woman reported she had been forced to stay against her will. Management moved fast. The situation was quietly settled. The woman vanished from the headlines, and the machine kept moving. Those who worked closely with Marvin say he was obsessed with control, especially in relationships. Rumors swirled about his alleged involvement in a private sex den in Mississippi that catered to artists and insiders, but no one dared confirm it. In that world, speaking up meant being erased. Marvin Cease died of lung cancer in 2011. His funeral was small, yet hundreds of women came to say goodbye. One woman placed a large piece of candy on his coffin. Maybe she had once been the candy in his songs, but in her eyes, it wasn't love she remembered. It was bitterness. Marvin's legacy isn't just his music. It's the uncomfortable question he left behind. Art may touch the body, but does that give it the right to trample the soul? Johnny Taylor. They called him the silent king of heartbreak. Once known as every Southern woman's dream, Johnny Taylor ruled the soul charts with a velvet voice and eyes full of fire. Songs like Who's Making Love and Cheaper to Keep Her didn't just play on the radio, they told stories people recognized as their own. His music smiled, seduced, and confessed all at once. But behind that golden halo lived a truth that quietly haunted the music industry. Johnny Taylor had many children, far more than anyone could count, and for years, no one truly knew how many were his. In 2002, 2 years after his death, a shocking lawsuit pulled the curtain back. At least 7 children stepped forward, claiming Johnny Taylor was their biological father. Some of them were older than the sons he publicly acknowledged. One daughter, Cheryl, shared a story that still lingers in silence. Her mother was a dancer who toured with Johnny in 1974. One night, he gave her a necklace, a small promise, a fleeting memory, and then vanished as if they had never met. Cheryl said every time one of his songs played, her mother would fall silent, lost in a past she never spoke about. The most whispered story, however, was about a baby boy rumored to be Johnny's child with a woman married to a soul-trained security guard. The child had Johnny's curly hair, his mischievous eyes, and the same undeniable love for singing. Yet Johnny never confirmed the connection. After a heated internal dispute, the security guard resigned, and the entire incident was quietly buried as a personal matter. Johnny Taylor died in 2000, taking his secrets with him, secrets no one dared to confront while he was alive. His will contained only one haunting line: "I love all my children, named and unnamed." To his fans, he remains a legendary artist. To some women, he is an unhealed wound. And to the children who never heard his name spoken publicly, he is a shadow, a question that was never answered. Syl Johnson, the man with two faces. Syl Johnson was a name that lived in two worlds at once, music and power. With the explosive hit, Is It Because I'm Black?, he was celebrated as an artist brave enough to speak uncomfortable truths, a voice of conscience in a divided America. But behind that righteous, socially conscious image was a private life that shocked many who knew him. In Chicago's music scene, Syl had another reputation. Insiders whispered that he was a man who couldn't sleep alone. A former bandmate once revealed that Syl carried a notebook everywhere, not for lyrics, but for the names of women who had spent the night with him. That notebook mysteriously vanished during an airport baggage check. Just a month later, an anonymous letter arrived at his record label, demanding hush money in exchange for keeping the notebook quiet. A female singer who worked with Syl in 1981 later claimed that after she rejected his invitation to stay the night and write music until morning, she was quietly dropped from the entire summer tour. "He doesn't take rejection well," her manager warned her. In 1985, a handwritten note, believed to be from a former lover, circulated privately among artists. "You say you're against discrimination, yet you objectify women. Worse than that, you're a hypocrite." The letter was never released publicly, but it was passed from hand to hand like a cautionary tale. Syl Johnson passed away in 2022, leaving behind hundreds of powerful songs, and a legacy tangled in contradiction. To some, he was a black warrior who spoke truth to power. To others, a deeply flawed womanizer who abused his influence. Maybe the truth lives somewhere in between. And the real question is this: if you stood face to face with Syl Johnson at the end of his life, what would you say? Joe Tex. The man who didn't just sing his songs, he lived them. Joe Tex was charisma in human form. From playful hits like Skinny Legs and All, to the soul-soaked wisdom of Hold What You've Got, his music made people laugh, sway, and feel seen. On stage, he was electric. Off stage, those who knew him said something even more unsettling: Joe never acted. He was the lyrics, but fearless, unpredictable. One band member once revealed that Joe had an unusual ritual whenever he arrived in a new city. He'd ask the hotel to prepare fresh red roses and request a list of local women who admired him. After shows, his manager often relied on fan clubs to discreetly select guests for private invitations. Then came 1976. At a Motown event in Los Angeles, Joe allegedly invited a 17-year-old girl to his hotel room after the show. When her mother discovered what happened and contacted the police, the record company moved fast, dispatching lawyers to quietly settle the situation. The story never reached the headlines, but the consequences were real. Joe was quietly shut out of several major television appearances. Whispers followed him everywhere after that. It's long been rumored that Joe once wrote a series of handwritten letters to a famous female singer, pleading with her not to reveal what he called their unforgettable night in 1969. Those letters, according to insiders, still sit locked away in his former manager's safe. Joe Tex died in 1982, officially from a heart attack. His death certificate labeled him a singer-songwriter, but to those who truly knew him, that description fell painfully short. Joe Tex was both honest and dangerous, charming and destructive, a man who blurred the line between art and life. And in the end, he stood as a haunting reminder that sometimes living too closely to the lyrics doesn't just move the world, it makes it cry. Tyrone Davis, the man with the inviting eyes. They once called Tyrone Davis the seducer with a voice. With that sweet, aching whine and a gaze that lingered just long enough, he turned longing into music. Songs like Can I Change My Mind didn't just top charts, they became bedroom anthems for an entire generation of soul lovers. But behind the microphone lived a man who seemed to treat life itself like an endless love scene. A female singer who toured with him once said Tyrone had a strange habit. He joked that he wrote lyrics on women's backs. Not paper. He laughed. But his eyes didn't. In 1984, backstage at a Jackson concert, a fan later claimed she was kept behind after Tyrone suggested she might sing with him if she softened herself. The story disappeared before it ever reached the press. A former manager revealed that for the first 2 years, Tyrone demanded every venue include a private sitting room, supposedly for meditation. But everyone knew what really happened in that room. It was where female fans were entertained, quietly and far from the spotlight. One woman later wrote a handwritten letter to Ebony magazine, describing the unspeakable emotional pain she carried after a single night with her idol. The letter was never published. When Tyrone Davis died in 2005 from complications of lung disease, hundreds gathered to honor his legacy. The music, the memories, the magic. But among the mourners stood a few women in silence, nameless, wordless, eyes heavy with bitterness and things left unsaid. His music may have healed millions. His life did not. And sometimes, the sweetest notes hide tragedies deeper than we ever imagine. If you're still listening, it means your heart is big enough to accept one hard truth. No light is ever completely pure. The first 10 stories are only the prelude. What comes next will keep your eyes locked to the screen. And ask yourself this: if we lived surrounded by fame and temptation, would we be any different? Barry White was the night whisperer. He didn't need to touch anyone to make them shiver, he only had to open his mouth. With a voice that felt like velvet in the dark, songs like Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe, became the very definition of seduction. To the world, he was known as the love whisperer. But among those who stood close to him, another name was spoken in hushed tones: the shadow controller. One woman, a former record cover model, later revealed that in 1979, Barry summoned her to his studio to discuss her image. The conversation stretched on for 3 hours, locked away in a private room with no witnesses. When she finally emerged, she was in tears. Her image remained on the album cover, but she never received a single dollar. When reporters asked Barry about it, he brushed it off, saying she was merely an inspiration. A former stage manager recalled that Barry often demanded for special tickets be set aside at every show. They were always for the same type of guests, young women, long curly hair, dressed in black. They arrived quietly. They left early. One of them was later seen leaving a hotel with him, crying, clutching a torn dress. Barry White died of kidney failure in 2003. At his funeral, his music played softly and solemnly. To the world, he was the voice of love. But to some women, he was not a symbol of romance. He was a symbol of silence, of fear, and of never being able to speak up. And sometimes, no matter how beautiful the music sounds, it is only a cover. Wilson Pickett, the Black Whirlwind, forever on the edge of control. They called him the Black Whirlwind for a reason. His voice was raw fire, his performances explosive, unmatched in the midnight hour. When Wilson Pickett took the stage, he didn't just sing, he detonated. That sound made him a legend. But the midnight hour carried another meaning. It was also the time, some whispered, when Wilson lost control of himself. In 1972, a guitarist on tour claimed Pickett violently kicked in a hotel room door after his girlfriend refused to act out a sexual scene he had written for that night. Police were called, but before the story could surface, the tour manager stepped in. The incident vanished, erased from the record. The most tightly guarded story came from a woman who worked as a backup dancer on a television show where Pickett appeared. She later claimed she was coerced into making a private video with him, one that was secretly saved on his personal camcorder. When she tried to take the story to the press, she said the tape was used as leverage to silence her. "Music is war, and I am the weapon," Wilson once said. Those words seemed to describe not only his presence on stage, but the chaos of his personal life. To millions, he was a god of soul. To others, he was a quiet, nameless fear. Wilson Pickett died in 2006, leaving behind music that refuses to die, and a question that still lingers in the shadows. Can we celebrate genius while ignoring the pain it may have caused in silence? David Ruffin was the soul of the Temptations. He didn't just sing, he bled emotion into every note. With songs like My Girl, his voice sounded like devotion itself. He made women everywhere believe in a man who could love deeply, faithfully, forever. But behind that velvet voice lived a very different truth. Those who fell in love with David Ruffin rarely walked away unscarred. A close friend once revealed that David kept a handwritten list of his lovers' names, not as keepsakes, but to avoid mixing them up during late-night calls. The list stretched 4 pages long. One former Soul Train backstage worker recalled a night in Chicago when David allegedly pressured a young female singer to stay alone with him in the studio, implying her Motown contract depended on it. She refused. By morning, her name had quietly vanished from the schedule. For years, whispers followed him. One involved a secret relationship with a fellow R&B star who later admitted that when David became jealous, he became violent. "He loved like he was fighting," she said. "And that kind of love doesn't heal, it leaves scars." In 1991, David Ruffin died from a drug overdose. Among the hundreds of women who had passed through his life, no one knows who he thought of last. His music still lives on, timeless, beautiful, unforgettable. But the darkness behind the voice continues to haunt those who know the full story. Maybe the most frightening thing isn't someone who doesn't know how to love, but someone who loves too much and destroys everything in the process. Dennis Edwards, Motown's hidden lover. When Dennis Edwards joined the Temptations, he didn't just replace a voice, he changed the temperature of the room. His sound was bold, fierce, and electrifying, a raw force that reignited the group and pulled audiences in from the very first note. Offstage, Dennis was a quiet man. But behind the scenes of the Motown world, he was known for something else entirely, a silent heat that followed him everywhere. They called him the hidden lover, because so many women passed through his life that no one could ever tell what was real and what was just a moment. A former female backing vocalist once claimed Dennis had a ritual. After every show, he would meet women in his car, always parked in the darkest corner of the lot. Every encounter lasted exactly 30 minutes. No more. No less. It wasn't romance, it was routine. There were whispers that he once got a famous girl group member pregnant. But her fame and the pressure from her record label forced her to walk away in silence. The story never made the headlines, never appeared in print. Yet one member of management later confirmed something unusual, an unexplained extra payment that month. Dennis Edwards passed away in 2018. He left behind a legacy of powerful, soul-shaking music. But he also left unanswered questions about the man behind the microphone. To fans, he was fire on stage. To some women, he was a burn that never healed. And to the music industry, perhaps he remains a chapter that was never fully written. Eddie Kendricks. A sweet voice, a messy life. Eddie Kendricks was the softness hidden inside the strength of the Temptations. His ethereal falsetto didn't just sing, it seduced. Every time he performed Just My Imagination, women melted, rooms fell silent, and hearts leaned in to listen. But off stage, that imagination became a maze of love even Eddie himself couldn't escape. He was known as a quiet man in public, but in private, he was a passionate, complicated lover. One security guard once recalled a night when Eddie brought 3 women backstage at the same time, introducing each of them by a different name. The truth only unraveled when one woman noticed the other 2 waiting nearby. Motown kept many secrets, but one nearly exploded. Eddie was involved in an affair with a woman married to a producer at the label. The tension threatened an internal scandal and was quietly resolved by removing both men from the winter tour. No headlines, no explanations. Just silence. Years later, a handwritten note, never released to the press and believed to be Eddie's, surfaced. I don't know who I love. I just know I don't want to sleep alone. Those words haunt listeners just as deeply as his voice once did. Eddie Kendricks died of lung cancer in 1992. At his funeral, friends spoke of his music. Fans spoke of how he made them feel. But no one spoke of the women who loved him quietly, in the shadows. Maybe because they understood the truth. That voice was never meant for one woman. It belonged to the world. While his heart kept searching until the very end, Al Green, the church prince burned by boiling water. Al Green was once the sound of heaven on vinyl. With timeless hits like Let's Stay Together and Love and Happiness, his voice wrapped itself around the world, gentle, soulful, and deeply spiritual. To the public, he was the embodiment of purity and divine romance, a man who sang as if God himself were listening. But behind that holy image was a life riddled with passion, secrecy, and scandal, enough to make even the church turn its head away. They called him the church prince, yet his private life read like a holy book turned upside down. In 1974, everything exploded. While Al Green was bathing, his girlfriend, Mary Woodson, allegedly threw a pot of boiling water on him, severely burning his body. Moments later, she took her own life with a gunshot. The music stopped. The halo cracked. At the time, the media dismissed it as an emotional dispute. But a far darker story surfaced through a housemaid who claimed Mary had discovered that Al had promised to marry her, while secretly carrying on affairs with at least 2 other women. Police reportedly found a handwritten letter in Mary's suitcase. I am not a name on your waiting list. I am a human being. That letter was never released to the public. It remains sealed in internal files, protected, some say, to preserve the image of the man who sang for God. After the incident, Al Green turned fully toward the church, becoming a pastor. To some, it was redemption. To others, an escape. Did he seek God out of genuine remorse, or to avoid the questions no one wanted answered? Al Green is still alive today. Still singing. Still preaching. But in the eyes of some women who once loved him, admiration has quietly transformed into regret. Because sometimes, a person can sing about love their entire life and still never truly understand it. Jackie Wilson. A fire that never burned out, even when the curtain fell. On stage, Jackie Wilson was pure electricity. Every twist, every spin, every scream ignited the crowd, pulling audiences into a state of musical ecstasy. He wasn't just performing, he was exploding with life. They called him Mr. Excitement, but those who truly knew him added a quieter, darker footnote. The excitement didn't end backstage. One insider once said, Jackie didn't perform on stage, he lived there. A former stage manager recalled an incident during a Southern tour, when Jackie was reportedly caught being overly intimate with a dancer in the prop room during intermission. When the manager attempted to report it, he was silenced. The company's security team allegedly threatened legal action, warning him not to damage the artist's carefully crafted image. But the most disturbing story surfaced years later, in 1980, when rumors spread of a secret child. A woman claimed Jackie was the father of her son, conceived during his stay at a Memphis hotel where she worked as a maid. She contacted the record label, requesting a DNA test. The request was logged, and then, mysteriously, vanished within a month. That same year, Jackie Wilson suffered a devastating stroke and fell into a coma. The truth was never confirmed. He never regained consciousness. In 1984, he died without a final statement, without closure, without answers. The world remembers Jackie Wilson for his legendary dance moves and his soul-shaking voice. But for a few who stood close to him, one question still lingers in the shadows. Can the halo of fame hide the truths we're afraid to confront? Isaac Hayes was the king of cinematic soul, and the mystery behind the red velvet curtain. He was more than a musician, he was an empire. From his Oscar-winning theme from Shaft to his lush instrumental love songs, Hayes brought a refined, instinctive elegance to black music that few could rival. But behind the spotlight, whispers followed him. He was known in industry circles as the king of the red curtain, a name tied to private rooms where exclusive writing sessions took place, sessions where only women were invited. A former Stax Records employee once claimed Isaac kept a private key to a hidden studio, used not for music, but for recording personal videos far from public view. In 1977, a tape allegedly surfaced showing Hayes and two models reenacting song lyrics while nude. The record label moved fast, pulling the tape before it could spread. One young female singer later recalled being invited to go deeper into the emotion of songwriting with Isaac, alone, in a private apartment, with the clear understanding that no one else would be present. She declined. 1 week later, she was quietly removed from a collaborative album, without explanation. Isaac Hayes died in 2008 from a stroke. His funeral was grand and solemn, attended by thousands who came to honor a legend. Yet in the shadows, a few women remained unnamed, unheard, and forgotten. His music lives on, but the question lingers. How many voices were silenced so that one genius could shine? Chuck Berry, the man who seemed to record everything. He was the pioneer who helped give birth to rock and roll, a musical genius whose riffs shaped generations. But behind the legend was another story, one that stunned the entire nation when it came to light. Berry became known as the man who was always watching. Investigators discovered that he had secretly installed hidden cameras inside the bathroom of a restaurant he owned. What those cameras captured was disturbing. In 1990, police searched his home and uncovered dozens of videotapes, footage of women changing clothes, some of them allegedly minors. According to a former employee, Berry personally reviewed the recordings every week and locked them away in a private safe. The lawsuits followed. Quietly, Berry paid nearly $1.3 million to settle the case out of court. One former waitress later said, "I thought I was working for a legend, until I saw my own face staring back at me from a hidden camera." Chuck Berry never issued a public apology. In the final years of his life, he withdrew from the spotlight, living in near isolation and avoiding the media altogether. When he died in 2017, most tributes focused on guitars, rock anthems, and Johnny B. Good. But the haunting question remains. How did a musical genius, one who changed the sound of the world, choose to leave behind a shadow so dark that few dare to look back at it? Rick James, the self-immolating sex god of funk. "I don't need heaven," he once boasted. "I live like a god in hell." With his braided hair, leather-clad swagger, and a lifestyle fueled by excess, Rick James became the ultimate symbol of unrestrained sexuality in the 1980s. He didn't just perform funk, he embodied it. Fame, power, and pleasure followed him everywhere. But behind the glitter and groove, his behavior wasn't just outrageous. It crossed a dangerous legal line. In 1993, Rick James was arrested after holding a woman captive in a hotel room for days, brutally abusing and torturing her alongside his girlfriend. The details were so horrifying that Motown artists reportedly closed ranks in silence, choosing to protect the musical legacy rather than confront the truth. Rick James was sentenced to 5 years in prison. He didn't have sex, one witness later said. He controlled. And everyone was afraid. After his release, Rick attempted a comeback. New music, talk show appearances, public apologies. But something had changed. The charm felt forced. The smile didn't reach his eyes. As one article chillingly described him, he was a lion unleashed among the weak. In 2004, Rick James died of heart failure, taking with him a legacy tangled in both brilliance and disgrace. To this day, the question remains unanswered. Was Rick James a victim of fame, or a man who burned himself alive in the fire of his own lust? James Brown, the king of funk and the nameless children. James Brown was the undisputed king of funk, a force of raw energy that knew no limits. On stage, he was thunder and fire, electrifying every crowd he touched. But behind the blinding lights and roaring applause lived a very different man, one whose legacy extended far beyond music into lives lived quietly in the shadows. James Brown fathered children with multiple women, many of whom were never publicly acknowledged. A former manager once said he could name every song James ever wrote, yet couldn't recall the names of all his children. Fame gave him immortality, but responsibility often slipped through his fingers. After his death in 2007, the truth surfaced. 12 people stepped forward, claiming to be his biological children, forcing the family into mass DNA testing. One of them was a 15-year-old boy from Georgia. His mother said she had been a dancer in a group that performed in 1990, and after the show, she stayed behind with James. She was only 18. Another woman never asked for proof, only remembrance. She left behind a handwritten letter that James Brown never read. "I don't need you to admit it. Just remember that you once told me you loved me." That letter never reached him. James Brown died with millions of fans mourning around the world, but he also left behind an emptiness his own family could never fully mend. People still sing "I Feel Good" to honor his genius. But the question remains, did those nameless children ever feel good at all? Ray Charles was a man who saw the world instinctively. Though he was blind, he experienced life through sound, touch, and feeling, and women through every sense he had left. With more than 50 hit songs and 12 Grammy Awards, he became an irreplaceable legend, a giant of soul whose music reshaped American culture. But beyond the studio lights and roaring applause, another story followed him. Ray Charles was rumored to have fathered dozens of children. After his death, at least 12 individuals came forward, claiming to be his illegitimate sons and daughters. One of them later said, "He didn't remember my face, but he remembered that night backstage at ABC Records." According to witnesses, Ray had a private room, always locked, where young girls were brought in under the promise of career opportunities. One witness claimed he could tell who stood before Ray by the way they trembled. Ray Charles passed away in 2004. His music overflowed with soul, pain, and beauty. Yet behind the scenes of his extraordinary life lingered a quieter blues, the untold stories of those whose names never made the record sleeves. Prince, the lawless lover. Prince was a universe entirely his own, where music, desire, and soul collided in a single purple storm. From Purple Rain to Kiss to Darling Nikki, his art blurred the line between sound and seduction. He shattered every boundary of gender, morality, and censorship without ever asking for permission. But behind the dim stage lights, Prince carried another name, the limitless lover. One former dancer recalled a rehearsal where he asked all the female performers to wear only underwear, searching for inspiration in raw vulnerability and movement. Within the inner circle of Paisley Park, rumors swirled endlessly of same-sex affairs, transgender lovers, and relationships that defied convention or labels. Someone once said Prince never cared who you were, only whether you made his heart race. And when he died, he left behind an enormous fortune, but no will. Not a single lover was named. Perhaps because Prince never truly belonged to anyone. His entire life belonged only to passion. Sam Cooke, pure charisma, undeniable charm. He was the angelic voice of the 1960s, a pioneer who helped carry black soul music beyond America and into the world. His sound was smooth, hopeful, and timeless. But the night he died was anything but. In 1964, Sam Cooke was shot and killed inside a small Los Angeles motel under circumstances that remain deeply unsettling. Reports claim he had been with a young woman, accused her of theft, and then burst into the motel manager's office, naked and enraged. Moments later, gunshots rang out. An employee later recalled hearing Sam scream, "She cheated me. I just want my money." Authorities ruled the case a justified killing, fueled by jealousy and chaos. But many have never accepted that explanation. Some believe the truth was far darker, an incident quietly buried to protect reputations, hide forbidden relationships, and silence rumors of secret lovers and illegitimate children. Sam Cooke was only 33 years old when his life was cut short, his career at its peak, leaving behind not just legendary music, but a mystery that still refuses to fade. Marvin Gaye, a man who loved, musically and emotionally, until his very last breath. Marvin Gaye wasn't just the voice of R&B, he was its beating heart. But behind the velvet tones and timeless melodies was a man relentlessly driven by desire. Let's Get It On wasn't merely a love song, it was a confession set to music. His private life was tangled and turbulent, marked by forbidden love, rumored relationships that challenged the norms of his time, and an overwhelming need for intimacy so deep that solitude felt unbearable. One former lover once revealed that Marvin would ask to record their breakup conversations, turning raw heartbreak into fuel for his art. In 1984, after days lost to depression, paranoia, and inner torment, Marvin Gaye's life ended in the most tragic way, shot by his own father. He was more than a musical icon. He was living proof that loving too deeply, without peace, can slowly destroy even the most beautiful soul, one that once believed it could heal the world through music. The stories behind the spotlight can be shocking, but they also remind us of a painful truth. Fame doesn't erase wounds, it often hides them. If the music and stories in this video made you feel something, made you think, or helped you see these legends in a new light, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about Black artists and iconic celebrities you won't want to miss.